And we are recording. So, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's session. My name is Momina, and I'm going to be your session coordinator for the night. So, we are very excited to have Erin with us today, who is an employment and immigration lawyer. And I'm not going to say too much about her because I want to let her introduce herself. But just a reminder that this is being recorded. So, if you, for whatever reason, want to watch it again, it's on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, please. So there's that. If you have any questions during Erin's spiel, just keep them in mind. And for the last 15 minutes, we'll have a Q&A where you can ask her all of your burning desires. So don't worry. So Erin, I am not going to pass you the virtual microphone to start.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. It's so nice to meet you all virtually. Hopefully you're not too zoomed out today, or if you're watching this on the replay. So my name is Erin O'Rourke. I am from St. Catharines, Ontario, and I was called to the bar almost a year ago, which is crazy to think about now. It's been so long. It's gone so fast that it feels like I just became a lawyer, but it's actually been quite a while now. So I should probably stop saying I just got called to the bar soon. So I will kind of go through this timeline that I've made for you guys. So from 2011 until 2015, I went to McGill University. In undergrad, I studied international development, Middle East studies, and international relations. I really enjoyed my time at McGill, but I found it to be a very challenging couple of years, I would say. I definitely had some ups and downs. I played varsity field hockey when I was there and went on exchange. And I could get into some of the particulars later, but just as an overview, that's kind of what I did at McGill. I then wrote my LSAT in 2015. So I wrote in both October and December. And again, I can kind of go over that as well. And then I was in law school from 2016 until 2019. I wrote the bar exam in 2019. I articled in Hamilton at a full service firm from 2019, July 2019 until May of 2020. And in 2020, I got called to the bar and started my own firm, Erin O'Rourke Law. So the first kind of step in getting to where I am now was going to undergrad. So as I said, those were my majors and the classes that I took while I was at McGill. I studied abroad in Tel Aviv in Israel in 2014. So I was there for 4.5 months from January until the end of May, mid-May-ish. That was a very interesting, eye-opening experience, and I was able to travel throughout Israel and a bit through the West Bank, and also was able to go to Turkey on my spring break from there. So that was a very interesting experience. I learned a lot while I was away. I took a stab at Arabic and Hebrew. I don't know much now. I think it's all gone from my brain. I don't think if I remember anything of those two languages, but I definitely tried my best in them. When I was at McGill, I also played field hockey. So I was on the varsity field hockey team from my second year until my fourth year. And I note that because I used that experience almost throughout law school as an example of whenever I was asked in interviews, when is a time that you faced adversity, or tell me about a time that you failed, I always talk about my field hockey experience. So in first year of undergrad, I tried out for the field hockey team and I didn't make it. And I was kind of crushed by it. I loved field hockey and, would have loved to keep playing. But when I played in field hockey in high school, we played on grass fields. And when we were playing at university level, it was all on turf. And so a lot of the girls that I was trying out with, especially from the West Coast, if anyone's from the West Coast, you know that that's pretty common to play field hockey on turf out there. And so I took that year to work on my skills. I came to training in the winter with them, and I tried out the year later and I made the team. But I didn't play much in many games that year. So I was what they call redshirted. But I still kept training and still kept coming to practice and, you know, chipped away at learning how to play and transfer my skills from playing on grass to playing on the turf. And by my fourth year, I was starting a lot of games and actually scoring a majority of the goals. So it was a big uphill battle, but just to show that I was able to use experiences that you wouldn't normally think of, like, oh, that's totally applicable to law. Yeah, I still used that story for many interviews and people really enjoyed hearing about that. So I just recommend, you know, when you're applying to law schools, when you're looking at what you're doing, don't get too caught up in, oh my gosh, is this going to help me get into law school? Is this what I need to be doing? Like something more traditional, like what I did debate. I barely talked about my debate experience, but I always talked about this field hockey experience because it's a little bit different and shows a little bit of personality and perseverance. So don't get too caught up if you haven't taken, you know, political science courses, or if you haven't taken certain things that you think you should for undergrad, or like in undergrad for law school, because the people that I met in law school have a variety of different backgrounds. So my boyfriend, for example, did psychology in his undergrad. I know people who did a full nursing degree before coming to law school. I know people who studied sciences and a whole bunch of different areas of law. So don't stress too much about what you are taking in undergrad. Just really make the most of an undergrad experience. And if you've already completed it, just look back on experiences that you did have and see how you can transfer those skills into something that will help you with future applications down the road. So I also like briefly touched on it, but I did debate. My dad was my debate coach from a very young age. I believe it was I was in fifth grade, and it was the first debate tournament that I went to. And my dad was the debate coach, and he was hosting this debate tournament. And it was a persuasive speaking round. And I was given a little like piece of cardboard with a sentence on it. And I had 2 minutes to think of something to give a 5-minute speech without notes, right? And so I got this little thing and it said, "The grass is greener on the other side." And I just stood up at the front of the classroom and just started crying, to the point where the judges just had to go find my dad for me and pull me out and say, "Oh, your daughter's crying." But I tell that story again because it shows that, you know, I didn't just all of a sudden be able to public speak and be able to grow, and I wasn't just, you know, all of a sudden good at things that are needed in my practice today. I failed at that again at the beginning, and throughout middle school, high school, and undergrad, I continuously worked on those skills by being in debate club and really chipped away at honing those skills, but it definitely was not something that came to me naturally. So again, don't stress if something is not within your wheelhouse and you think it's important or you want to build on it, then by all means, go for it. But I mean, I think debating is really important because it helps you learn to think on your feet and public speak. But, you know, my dad was also my coach, so he really distilled that in me. But there's all sorts of different types of lawyers, and it's not exactly what you see on TV all the time. So there's not one way to be a lawyer. So those are kind of some of the experiences that I had throughout undergrad that helped shape my trajectory. So I graduated in June of 2015. I'm putting all of the gears together. It's hard to keep track right now. But when I was in undergrad, I knew that I was thinking about law school, and I was really nervous about the LSAT, as I'm sure if you haven't taken it already, or if you've taken it but want to redo it, it can be very unnerving. But I took my first LSAT in October of 2015. I was not ready to take it. I probably should have postponed that. But I was very strong-willed and thought, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to do it anyways. And I wrote it in October of 2015, and I did not get very good scores. Like, did not think I would be able to get into any law schools with those scores. And I was really, anxious. So I graduated in June. This is now October. And now I'm thinking, well, I guess when I got my decision, it would have been November, but it's now, the fall. I'm no longer a student anymore. After being a student for so many years, I was very stressed and anxious about what to do next. I had made this whole plan that I was going to take the LSAT and get into law schools, and all my applications were done. And I was so excited to be, going towards this path, because I had decided that law school was the right path for me rather than doing a master's. And the October exam went terribly. So what I did differently is that I really made it into more of a full-time job. And then I worked part-time, but I really focused in for those few weeks between November and December. And the things that I did the most, that were most helpful, was having a proper practice test schedule and having a tutor that helped me stay on schedule. I'm pretty sure I found my tutor over Kijiji, or I don't know back in the day how I found my tutor, somewhere on the internet. I didn't have like expensive tutoring or anything like that. They were just a few sessions and more of like a scheduling and planning. So it really helped with kind of the strategy and building some confidence. So they helped me kind of assist with the study schedule so that I would feel more confident going into the December LSAT. I found that to be really helpful, and taking practice tests definitely helped get the timing down, because I think when I was going into the October exam, I was working really hard on trying to figure out, how do I do games? How do I answer these questions? What are like the tricks of getting these questions done? And at the time I was doing the Kaplan online course, so like the virtual course. I also had taken a Kaplan course in person, I think 2 years earlier than that. And that was helpful, but it was so far out that it probably didn't stick as much with me. I think it was too early to have done that, but because I had done that, I think I had access to the online course. I can't remember quite how it worked, but nonetheless, I took this online Kaplan course, and I distinctly remember sitting at my desk late at night sometimes, and my mom would bring me dinner at my desk, and I would just be chipping away at trying to do practice tests. And one thing that I learned almost the hard way is not to burn yourself out when you're studying, because when it comes to test day, the biggest thing that you have going for you is your focus and your stamina, right? So there's no like right answers. You don't need to memorize anything. You just need to be focused and to be able to write the exam within the given time limits. And so I just urge anyone who's taking it soon to really take it easy the days leading up to the exam. So you want to kind of taper your exam schedule, your exam prep down. You want to be building confidence during that time. So one thing that people had told me to do was to redo questions you know the answer to. or redo kinds of questions that you're good at, just to keep building up your self-confidence leading up to the exam. I also practiced waking up early because my exams were early in the morning and I'm not an early person. So I started to try and adjust my sleep schedule that week. I still don't think I slept the night before the exam, but I tried. So leading up to it, I adjusted my sleep schedule, tried to make a morning routine so that on the day of, it was just kind of like another day. Another fun trick that I did is the day before the exam. So when I wrote, it was on a Saturday, and I made that Friday like a really fun Friday. So because I was writing the exam all day, I went to get my nails done the day before the LSAT, so that I would have nice fresh nails. I would feel very confident, took my mind off of it. I didn't really study the day before, and I just got into a really good peace of mind. And I think that almost transferred to the way I handled exams and the bar exam, is that I realized that you can study as much as you want, but if you've burnt yourself out the day before or the day of, you're not going to be able to practice. It's not the same as studying for like an undergrad exam where you need to cram all of the answers. The way I studied in undergrad is so different from how I studied in law school. So I rewrote in December, as I said. I got into Windsor Law in July of 2016. So prior to that, I was thinking that I was going to be going to the US for law school. I had gone into Michigan State back in, I believe, January or February. And then I was looking at Buffalo and potentially living at home and commuting. And I'd kind of given up hope on any Canadian schools. I also thought it was a stretch that I would get into any Canadian schools because of my LSAT. It wasn't particularly strong. It was okay. I would say it was around the average of what other people at Windsor Law had. But it wasn't, anywhere in the 160s or anything like that or higher. And my undergrad grades were okay. They weren't anything special. So, I really didn't think I had much of a chance of getting into a Canadian school. But I was really shocked one day. During the year off, after I wrote the LSATs, I started working at a car dealership. And I remember I was sitting, it was like mid-July, and I got a call from Windsor saying, "Oh, do you still want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And they were like, "Okay, you're in." And so I drove up to Windsor. I'd never been to Windsor before. So my mom and brother were going to Windsor coincidentally that week for a track race. So my mom drove me down, and I had like one day off work. I drove down, took a tour. My mom drove me up and down the waterfront in Windsor, and I just fell in love with it and decided to go to Windsor. And I was so happy with the decision that I made. I really enjoyed my time at Windsor Law. And I, as you can see, did a lot of different things while I was at Windsor Law. So in my first year, I got involved with as many groups as I could on campus. I did work at the Legal Assistance of Windsor, which is one of two legal clinics at Windsor Law. And so I worked on Ontario Works files and Ontario Disability Support Program files. I worked on immigration files, mainly with migrant workers in the Leamington area, and then also worked on a lot of housing and tenant issues at the Landlord-Tenant Board. So that was a really amazing experience. I think it was one of the foundational experiences that I had, and I highly recommend anyone going to law school or considering law school to either volunteer or work in a legal clinic, because the skills that you learn there are so important and fundamental to the actual practice of law. So in law school, we learn a lot about theory. If you ask me, we learn too much about theory and not enough practical. If you ask my boyfriend, we learn too much practical and not enough theory. So it depends on the way you think about it. But I really enjoyed that experience. I was able to come back in the winter semester of my second year, and I did solely immigration work at the clinic, which was also really great and also helped build my foundation for my I thought I cut it off here. I just didn't read the second line, but I worked as a social justice fellow at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Toronto during the summer of 2018. So that is a fellowship program through Windsor Law, where they funded me to work in Toronto at the UNHCR, which was an amazing experience, a complete dream job for me. When I was at McGill, if you had asked me what I would want to be doing, I would have said working at the UN in a heartbeat. I was so thrilled to have this opportunity. I worked closely with Rana Khan and assisted in a variety of different ways. And mostly looking at the policy level. So it was a very different experience than my first summer at Legal Assistance of Windsor, which was more client-facing, working on individual files. And then my social justice fellowship was more of a zoomed out bird's eye view of how the law operates and who the stakeholders are in developing different laws and regulations, particularly as they pertain to refugees in that case, but it was a great overall experience to see how stakeholders play a role in the development of statute and regulations. So in my second year as well, I mooted with the Hicks-Morley moot. That is an employment law moot run by the firm Hicks-Morley in Toronto. And so I was able to do research on one side of the issue with my partner Gregor Gregorian, and we were one of two teams from Windsor Law that made it to the finals in Toronto. And when we made it to Toronto, we were actually flipped to the other side, so we had to learn the whole other side's arguments, which was really fun to switch it up and learn from a different perspective as well. So that was a really neat experience. That was more of like a optional kind of extracurricular moot, but really enjoyed that. I also participated in the Jessup International Law Moot in my third year. So pre-COVID, I got to go to Vancouver and compete in the Jessup International Law Moot, which was a really awesome experience. We won third place for our respondent memorial, which in the international law world is like your factum. So the writing piece of the argument, which was really fun. And I really enjoyed working with my partner in that moot, who was James Rice. And so that was a great experience to really gain some written advocacy skills, and as well as our oral advocacy skills. As you know, Jessup is really well known and a very competitive law moot. I was definitely grilled by the judges, but I definitely learned a lot, and it was a great overall experience. So I highly recommend mooting, especially if you're interested in litigation in law school. But I also think that they're very transferable skills, because even as a solicitor, you spend a lot of time either on the phone or in conference calls with opposing counsel, or at least that's from my brief experience in articling with solicitor work, generally how I saw it. So I also worked for Pro Bono Students Canada. I was the co-coordinator of the Windsor Law chapter with my friend Piper. And we worked on coordinating different projects within the city with different students at our school. So the project that I worked on in my first year and second year was the Windsor Woman Working with Immigrant Women project, where we did different interviews with newcomers to Canada about their understanding of the law as it pertains to domestic violence and child abuse. And we took that information and compiled it into a memo for the organization to understand where the gaps in knowledge are to allow them to assist their clients better. So that was a really unique experience. And then in my third year, I was able to kind of be on the more administrative side and build those projects up and support them throughout the year. I was also part of the Innocence Project at Windsor, which was formerly known as the Association in Defense of the Wrongfully Convicted in Windsor. And then under my year as the president, we changed it to Innocence Project to match the Innocence Canada name, or Innocence Project Canada, just so that it was coherent throughout, and people weren't quite sure what ADWIC was, so we kind of changed that up. But when I was in my first year, we had a very interesting speaker come speak to us. So we actually had Amanda Knox come to our school, and I got to meet her, and that was a really neat experience. And it was right when like the Netflix documentary was coming out. So I had just stayed up all night, watching all of this documentary, and then she was sitting right in front of me. So that was a very powerful time and a very interesting experience to hear her story firsthand, especially after watching the documentary and the slant that gives as well. We had various other speakers at the school throughout my time there. But in my final year, we had Maria Shepard, who is closely associated with the National Innocence Canada program, as she herself was exonerated. And if anyone has not heard her story before, I strongly recommend that you check it out, because Maria is one of the strongest people I've ever heard from and has a remarkable story. So I highly recommend going to check out the work that she's doing and what she's overcome as well. So then after law school, there's a whole bunch that just happened there in law school. And then we go to the bar exam. So I wrote the bar exam in Windsor, Ontario, which was a great experience. If you can ever write it not in Toronto, that is always great. From what I hear in Toronto, it's in a massive convention center and it's just chaos. But I mean, now COVID times, it's all virtual. So I wonder how that will pan out in the future. But when it was in Windsor, we got to write it in this old Italian club, which was very small, safe, very nice. The way I approached bar exam prep was pretty much the same as how I approached the LSAT, really making sure that I was getting my timing down and testing myself under those sorts of circumstances as much as possible, but also taking time to really familiarize myself with the materials, but not necessarily reading word for word and absorbing all the materials, more so getting to know where things are, what subjects are the most important to understand, and knowing that if there was something very particular or very specific, that I would be able to figure it out if needed. So again, same sort of thing, just went to cafes when that was a thing, studied there. I actually kind of liked bar exam prep season. I would just wake up, usually go for a workout, study, and then take off the evening. And it was just a very nice, like slow, structured day. I always kind of set a goal for how much I wanted to accomplish each day, and then would just go through it. So that brings me to articling. So I passed the bar exam, both solicitors and barristers, on my first attempt, which was a great relief. I remember I had saved up to go on a trip with my sister after the bar exam before articling started. And I remember like driving through a beautiful town in Italy on like this beautiful coastal bus ride, and just sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, did I pass the bar exams? And so it was always just kind of all encompassing. So I'm glad that it all worked out, but no fret if it doesn't work out on the first shot. There are tons of people out there that are willing to assist, and there's no shame in having to take it more than once. I just got lucky. That's truly it. And so I articled at Simpson Weigel Law in Hamilton. It's a full service firm, and these are kind of the areas of law that I got to work on the most. So I did a lot of employment law work, which was really great. It's an area I now practice in, which still feels weird to say, but I got a lot of experience in employment law and litigation as well. So that was an amazing experience. I really recommend articling at sort of a smaller or mid-sized firm if you want to do more hands-on work. I really don't think I would have been able to go out on my own without the sort of foundation that I received from Simpson Weigel Law. They were fantastic for articling, and I really did learn a lot. I was able to have full carriage of my own small claims court files, and I was able to take the lead on a lot of different cases and work, and really was able to do drafting and editing and communication with clients, all of these things that I now do daily. So I was really able to learn and grow through articling at Simpson Weigel. I also got to do some wills and estates, which, although I do not practice in that area of law, I really respect it. It's a very interesting area of law, and the lawyers were so great to bring us along and teach us about that area of law. So I also did some corporate law, which I don't really practice in right now, unless it kind of pertains to employment law. But it was still really great experience to work in areas of law that I wasn't sure about, learn what I did like and why I liked it, and learn, what I can appreciate but not prefer to do. And so I think that was a really great experience, having like a more fulsome articling experience. So then I got called to the bar in June of 2021. I got an email at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I believe it was June 12th or somewhere around there. So almost a year ago, 11 months now, I guess, since I've been called to the bar. So again, I keep saying just called to the bar, but it's almost been a year. So I didn't get hired back from articling because at the time, COVID was so unknown. I mean, I doubt anyone thought we would still be in this situation today. So everything was so up in the air. Hire back was extremely difficult at that time. A lot of law firms were letting off their staff and their lawyers, let alone trying to take on new lawyers. So it was definitely a dry market. I remember people saying, oh, well, things might open up by October, and, hiring might open up around then. But I have a large debt load, which if you've ever listened to my podcast, you will hear us talking about a lot. And, living off of CERB or trying to find part-time work did not seem feasible for me at the time. So I decided to open up my own law firm, Erin O'Rourke Law, on July 13th, 2021. So again, that year anniversary is also coming up quite quickly as well. So I opened my own law firm completely virtually. I'm calling you from Halifax, Nova Scotia. I've run my firm from here for a while and have been able to do everything virtually. And part of that is through COVID, through the design of COVID. I've been able to do motions virtually from here. I've been able to do everything from intake to closing all through my computer. And so when I first started my law firm, I thought, oh, there's no way that I'll be able to go out on my own. How would I afford a lease? How would I afford all of these things that I need to get off the ground? And once I started looking at it, I really learned what are the necessities for operating a law firm and what can make life easier. And I quickly learned that having an office space was not a necessity. It was probably a couple years ago more prominent because, you know, people like to go into the law firm, see the space, meet with people there. But the way that technology is going, clients have also been happy to adjust to this virtual world as well. I remember one of my clients saying, you know, this is great. I'm calling you from my house and I'm just wearing my yoga pants and I don't have to get dressed up, drive across town, find parking, and then go talk to my lawyer, which can already feel very intimidating and stressful. I can just call you from the comfort of my home. And so that has been a really nice part of being a lawyer in this time, is getting to just talk to clients where they feel safe, where they feel comfortable, and being able to work virtually. I mostly focus on employment and immigration issues, although I also do some litigation as it pertains to employment, but also some general commercial litigation as well. And I also do some tenancy work as well. I've found that tenancy and employment issues have been coming up a lot recently, especially with the back and forth with lockdowns and COVID. And so I have found that that's where a lot of people need guidance and quick advice on the changing rules as they keep evolving. I am a member at large of the Ontario Bar Association committee. I meant to put in the committee of small and solo lawyers. I am also the co-founder and co-host of the Off the Tracks podcast with my classmate Piper, who I talked about earlier, doing pro bono Students Canada work with. And on the podcast, we talk about all things law life and what it means to do life, what it means to practice law differently than the traditional model. So I am obviously not on the traditional path, opening my own law firm right out of law school and articling. So we talk about that. We talk about Piper's unique path in law. And we also talk with our guests about how they got to where they are in their legal career. And we just finished a whole debt series. So if you're considering law school, I highly recommend listening to that before. There's a lot of information that I wish I knew before, but I don't think I would change much. It's just interesting to know in hindsight. So any questions? I could keep talking forever, but figure now's a good time to stop for questions.
You actually have perfect timing because the Q&A was scheduled for the last 15 minutes anyway.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah. First of all, I just want to thank you for sharing a PowerPoint with us, because what I appreciate what you did specifically as compared to other lawyers is you meticulously went through every single finite detail on your life and what to do, which I really appreciate. It was like a little storybook. I also think it's very commendable that you opened your own law firm right out of articling in law school. And I think my favorite part of this entire journey is that you and Piper are still besties. That's what I gathered from this. So that's very encouraging to me. So one of the questions that I have before I open it up to everybody else is, as university students, it is inevitable that we are going to get a bad grade sometime. Maybe on a paper or an essay, we might do badly on the LSAT. We might get rejected from our first law school choice. So what I want to ask you is, in debate, you started crying. You didn't make field hockey the first year. You didn't do well on the LSAT in October, but every single time you somehow got yourself out of this muck, I'll call it. How did you overcome such dejection and adversity to achieve your goals?
Yeah, and there's actually even another story that I meant to mention that I forgot. So thank you for bringing up this question. But when I was in fourth year at McGill, I took a class. It was not needed for my major or minor or anything. I thought, hey, sociology of socialization should be a really interesting course. I just took it because I wanted to learn about it. And the midterm grade, the average was a 30%, aka failing. And so I went to get help at the like career services or academic counseling. And I was freaking out. Obviously, I'm like, hey, I am failing a course along with the rest of my classmates, but we're all failing this course. And I want to go to law school. And how am I going to get into law school with a failing course? Like, is it too late to withdraw this? Like, I didn't even need to be taking that course. I just took it for interest. And so I was like, can I just withdraw this course? Like, is this too late? Is it past the pass fail deadline? Like, how am I going to get into law school with a failing grade? And she actually, I don't remember what her name was. I don't know if she still works there or anything, but she actually laughed at me and said, where do you think you're going to go to law school? Nowhere in Canada, that's for sure. And I was just bawling in front of her, just like, what the heck? Like, ma'am, I'm just trying to figure out what to do about this grade. Like, can I cancel or not?
Why
Like,
would she say that?
Yeah, I don't need a pep talk. I'm like, I'm never going to get into law school. But if you're watching, I made it. So in all of those times, I just really came back to what my focus was. So now this class that was supposed to be just out of interest, I made that my top priority. So, I went to office hours, I put in the extra work in that course, and really focused on overcoming that challenge. Or when it was field hockey, I made sure to put my extra time and my effort into, making up for that, and trying again. So I think the biggest thing that helped me is just thinking about my priorities and why I wanted to do it. Like, why I wanted to play field hockey. I love playing field hockey. I really enjoyed it. It was physically demanding, and I have a lot of great memories from it. I wanted to go to law school, and so I worked really hard on that sociology class to ensure that I was able to bring my mark up. And I think I got it to a B+ or a B or something, but it felt like an A+. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you just have to take the chips as they fall, and then just reprioritize and think, okay, where do I want to go? And take that time to reflect. I could have easily said, you know what, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not cut out for law school, and then got a different path. But instead, I just took that moment and said, no, I don't care what this random person has to say. I still want to do this, and this is how I'm going to fix it, even if she's not going to help me. So I think that that's really important. And I think it's also just important to know that you are going to fail sometimes. And I know that sucks to hear, because no one likes getting that 30%. That wasn't fun at the time. Now I can laugh about it, but at the time I was probably crying every day.
Yeah, I mean, that lady literally told you you're never getting into law school. So I think it's okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't fun at the time, but just knowing that there's going to be those times. And there were those times in law school too. My worst grade, I think, is in employment law, which is hilarious because now I practice in employment law. You know what I mean? There's going to be things that come up, and it's just, how can you handle them? How do you frame them? Obviously that came up in interviews every single time, but a grade is not indicative of your ability to practice in that area or your desire to learn in that area. So I think it's all about how you frame it and how you adjust when something goes wrong.
Okay, thank you so much. That honestly is really helpful and encouraging. It's not soul crushing. I think Nada has her hand up. So Nada, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thanks, Momina, and hi, Erin. Thank you so much for coming. And that is such a horrific story, hearing your professor say that. I know I would never step foot in university again. That's brutal. I can't handle that. I don't have thick skin. But and so I know that you are working in employment law right now, and so you said that you knew you wanted to work in the UN, and this is what you wanted to do. And so was there a specific internship that you had, or a specific job that you had that kind of sparked that interest, where you kind of were determined oh yeah, this is the type of law I want to do? And did you have any doubts as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going into law school, I for sure did not think I was even going to write the bar exam or be a lawyer. I really just thought, okay, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to learn about the law, and then I'm going to do international law, or I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I was very focused on international problems when I was doing my undergrad, right? So I was doing international development, international relations. I was looking at international problems. When I got to law school, I really saw a lot of the issues within our own systems and within Canada. And so a lot of the things that I was passionate about, like human rights and equality and diversity, all of those same themes came popping up in different areas of the law in Canada. And so employment law was one of the first areas of law that I was like, oh, wait a second. Some of the things that I like about the international aspect are still here. And I can work in these areas even domestically. And I think part of that too was just kind of getting a bit older and realizing that I did want to be closer to, which I'm laughing now because I'm in Halifax, not close by my family, but I wanted to be closer to my family. I didn't want to have a big international career anymore. And I think maybe that was just part of growing up and also being away at school for 4 years. I just wanted to be a little bit closer. But I really started to enjoy employment law when I was in first year, and we had to do this mock mediation for, it was like professional skills and identity week or something. And we did a mock mediation, and the issue was it was like very complicated. It was like this guy ran off in the middle of the day and he didn't tell anyone where he was going, and then he got terminated. But it turns out that he ran off because his kid was kidnapped by his partner, but he didn't feel comfortable disclosing that to his employer because he worked for like a Christian employer, and he had a homosexual partner, and so he was confused about telling he didn't want to disclose that to his employer and didn't want that to affect his employment, but also wanted to go get his child back from this abduction to the US. It was a very intricate mediation problem. But I remember thinking, wow, this is very interesting. There's a lot of different things at play here. Okay, maybe I could, and I literally remember sitting down in my friend Liz's apartment saying, I wonder if I would like to do employment law. And then we just had a conversation about it. And then from there on, I just started looking at employment law jobs and really started getting interested in employment. And I think immigration really just comes from my love of international relations, international development. And I think that kind of gets to be brought in through the immigration work and refugee work as well.
Thank you for answering that. And sorry, I do have like another question, if that's all right with
worries.
Momina.
No,
So
you can't. Sorry. Next question. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
And so how do you feel now that you started your own firm? Like, let's just say if you went back in time and like COVID wasn't happening, would you still choose to go start your own firm, or would you choose to like work for another firm? Like, so how are you liking opening up your own firm and such?
Yeah, that is a tough question because literally the day before COVID hit, well, okay, COVID was, when I say hit, it was like when our world in Ontario shifted. I was out for lunch we went for breakfast because we love to eat breakfast, and we went out for breakfast and we were talking about hire back possibilities and coming back to the firm. And I was so on track for doing that. And so if not for COVID, I don't think I would have even really thought to go out on my own. I call it my COVID creation. It was kind of born out of this need to survive and to continue working. And I was also just so excited ironically, because at the beginning, I didn't think I was going to have a license. And then now I was just so excited to be able to use the license. And I knew a lot of people were struggling with how to interpret all of the changing regulations at the time. And I was really following up on that. And so I wanted to use my license and started looking into it. And so it's tough to say. If not for COVID, I don't know if I would have kind of taken a step back and looked at going out on my own so early on. I probably would have been a lot more scared if there were more options available to work in a firm environment at the time. But this kind of gave me an out, like, oh, well, there's not too much else to do right now anyways. So I can just make this leap of faith, because worst case scenario, I would just be unemployed at home. So it kind of gave like that security blanket to go out on my own. But now that I am practicing for myself, obviously there are stressful times and there are tough days, especially when it's just you. But I really, really love it. I have full control over my days. I have full control over what files I take, what sorts of areas of law that I practice, and I'm able to really tailor it to things that I want to work on. And so I don't know if I could go back to working in a different environment. Maybe down the line, I'll get sick of it. I don't know, who knows? I don't want to say never, because I would never thought that I would be out on my own this soon after, or ever. But I really love it. I think it is a really awesome experience. I've definitely learned a lot and I am enjoying each day, and literally every single day is different. So it's really fun.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's definitely like inspiring to start my own firm one day, hopefully.
I definitely encourage it. It's very fun.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Erin? Maybe you're typing in chat or raise your hand. Doesn't seem like it. You did cover everything very meticulously, so I guess that's why. No, I appreciate it. It was a very personable experience. Sometimes when lawyers talk, they seem like otherworldly, like super professional beings. It doesn't seem it's kind of achievable. I appreciate the personable fact that you brought to this session to make it seem like, hey, you can do this even if you fail.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. I hope that's what people take away from it. And I think maybe that's just because I'm so soon out of it. But I think it is really important to remember that lawyers are just people that have another degree and have gone through a few other loopholes to become lawyers. And so, always here, sorry, my next slide is my contact information. I just put my little logo there. But if you want to contact me, I didn't put my Instagram, but it's just Erin O'Rourke Law if you want to follow me there, or on Twitter, it's Erin F. O'Rourke. So follow me, message me if anything comes up. I'm always happy to help. I'm glad that that's what you're taking away from my presentation, because I do want everyone to know that it is possible. Just keep chipping away, no matter how many no's or fails that you have. If you just keep working and ask the right questions, you can do it.
Well, thank you again, Erin, for coming and taking time out of your very busy schedule to meet with us. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to let everyone say bye and end the recording.
Okay.
So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Aww.